Imagine waking up to a knock at your front door. In seconds, federal agents flood in, shouting orders. You and your children, all American citizens, are forced outside into the pouring rain. Your phones, your laptop, even the cash in your home are taken. The people they were looking for, they didn't even live there anymore. And when you demand answers, the government doesn't apologize. They simply shrug and say everything was done appropriately. That isn't fiction. That is what one family endured in Oklahoma when ICE conducted a raid. And when Congresswoman Veronica Escobar confronted Secretary Kristi Noem about it, the entire hearing turned tense. This exchange was about more than one raid gone wrong. It was about the unsettling question of whether due process, constitutional rights, and basic human dignity still matter when the Department of Homeland Security decides otherwise.
Madam Secretary, I have a question related to something more close to home for me in the community in El Paso with DHS employees. For decades, CBP employees who work at our land ports of entry have been contractually allowed by CBP to have an off-site location for their union. And this off-site location is completely funded by union dues, not by taxpayer money. And again, this was something agreed to in their contract. I was shocked and alarmed to learn that they were told by DHS they could no longer be off-site, and they were forced to come into a DHS facility in El Paso. It's a conference room, media training room. So that part of their contract, that longstanding agreement, was violated in my eyes. Are you aware of this at all?
I have heard about it, but I don't know the details of that agreement, so I can follow up with you and get that back to you. And if you would lay out the concerns for being co-located, I think that would be fantastic for me to know.
We will. We'll make sure to communicate with your team. Would love to work with you on this. The same has not been true for the Border Patrol Union. So there's disparate treatment, and additionally, just to very quickly lay out why it's important for union members to be able to speak to their union leaders in private, and being located in a small conference room, media training room, offers no privacy. There are other issues, but I look forward to working with you on that.
I do know that, the difference in the two unions is important, and I'll look into how those were interpreted. And I also know that the one union is located under the Treasury Union as well, and that defines some requirements and for how it's regulated and set out going forward. So I'll see if that is the determining factor on why there was a difference in how the locations were determined.
And I would ask, Madam Secretary, that you please allow the El Paso Union to continue to be housed off-site. It is their preference, doesn't impact the budget or appropriations. They pay for it. So I don't see a reason why this long-standing, decades-long situation should be changed. So would ask for your support for that, please.
I'll look into it.
Okay, perfect. I also wanted to ask you about this NBC News story, and I'll enter into the record this article as well. U.S. citizen family traumatized after ICE raided their Oklahoma home in search of someone else. And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, which was reporting on this story, immigration agents raided the home last week. They had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home. The family was forced to wait outside in the rain during the search. A mother and her girls, all U.S. citizens. Their money was taken, their laptop, their cell phone. I asked you at the top of our first round if you believed it was important for DHS and if you would attest to the fact that DHS needs to rectify any mistakes. If this were a mistake, will you ensure that this family, this U.S. citizen family, gets its property back in a timely manner?
Well, in that particular situation, the warrant for that situation was on the house and the facility, not on the individuals that were there. And so that house was being used for human smuggling. And so those operations were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But
and
if
so
it were a
we're-
mistake,
we are
Madam
continuing-
Secretary,
We
if
believe
it were a
everything was
mistake.
done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right, well, appreciate you looking into it, that not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of the worst, people who are here illegally. But we have seen reporting and spoken to individuals, we meaning Congress, that in fact, there have been abuses on that front. People with legal protections have been deported. I laid out in the first round U.S. citizen children. I don't know, and I asked, and you said you'd get back to me about whether parents actually filled out the ICE forms that are normally used for those processes. U.S. citizen families with nothing to do with human trafficking, and now DHS employees as well, in my view, have been subjected to an abuse of power. And we all swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a democratic republic. Rule of law is important, due process is important, and ultimately that will be my North Star, not just in this hearing, but throughout everything that I work on as a member of Congress. I thank you, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Escobar, representing El Paso, began with a case involving DHS employees themselves. For decades, CBP workers had been guaranteed the right to maintain an off-site union office. It wasn't funded by taxpayers, only union dues. It gave workers independence, privacy, and the ability to speak freely. That agreement had stood the test of time until now. Instead, they were forced into a government conference room inside a DHS facility, a media training space with no privacy. Escobar pointed out this wasn't just inconvenient, it violated their contract. And it revealed something worse: the Border Patrol Union wasn't subjected to the same treatment. Why the double standard? Why was one group of workers singled out? Secretary Noem admitted she'd heard about it but claimed she didn't know the details. She offered vague promises to look into it, but she refused to give a firm commitment to restoring their independence. For workers who expected their contracts to be honored, that answer was chilling, but what came next was even more disturbing. Escobar introduced into the congressional record a news report from NBC and KFOR in Oklahoma. The story described an ICE raid on a U.S. citizen family's home. A mother and her daughters, none of whom had done anything wrong, were targeted. Agents had a search warrant, but the individuals named on it had long since moved away. Still, the family inside was treated like suspects. They were dragged into the rain while agents combed through the house. Their personal belongings, phones, money, a laptop were seized. Imagine your own family in that position. Escobar didn't dramatize it. She laid out the facts and asked Secretary Noem a clear, direct question: if this was a mistake, would DHS ensure the family's property was returned in a timely manner? The answer shocked the room. Noem didn't apologize. She didn't promise accountability. She claimed the warrant was on the house, not the people, and argued the building had been used for human smuggling. To her, that justified everything. She concluded with a cold assurance: "We believe everything was done appropriately." That word appropriate hung in the air, as if raiding a citizen's home, traumatizing children, and confiscating property without charges was nothing more than a box checked off. Escobar pressed again. She argued that if a mistake was made, DHS had an obligation to make it right. Noem refused to budge. No admission of error, no pledge to correct anything, just the same bureaucratic wall. At that moment, the hearing turned from frustrating to frightening. Escobar zoomed out and painted the bigger picture. Reports had already surfaced of people with legal protections being deported anyway, children born on American soil swept up and sent away, due process ignored, even DHS employees, supposedly insiders, stripped of their union rights. This wasn't a single raid or a single union fight. It was a pattern, and that pattern pointed to an agency that had stopped seeing due process as a duty and had started treating it as optional. Escobar made it crystal clear: every member of Congress, every cabinet secretary, every government official swears the same oath, not to a party, not to a president, but to the Constitution. That oath is supposed to mean something. It guarantees protections for every person under the law, especially citizens. When DHS raids an American family's home and then insists everything was done properly, it's not just bad policy. And when the agency tramples contracts with its own employees, it signals a disregard for rule of law across the board. That's what made Escobar's questioning so powerful. She wasn't just arguing for one family or one union. She was asking the fundamental question, what happens when the government can target citizens without consequence? If an American family can be raided, their belongings taken, and their rights ignored, all under the label of appropriate, then what separates this country from the authoritarian systems we claim to oppose? This hearing didn't produce an apology. It didn't result in a commitment to return the Oklahoma family's property. It didn't restore the union's independence. What it did reveal was how fragile constitutional guarantees become when power is unchecked. Noem's refusal to concede even the possibility of error showed just how deeply accountability has eroded, and that leaves all of us with a chilling reality. If DHS can raid citizens today and walk away unchallenged, who's next? What happens when constitutional protections are treated like inconveniences? What happens when due process is reduced to a talking point? That isn't just an immigrant issue, it isn't just a labor issue, it is an American issue. So here's the question for you. Do you believe DHS has gone too far under Secretary Noem's leadership? Should citizens ever accept that having their homes raided and their property seized can be labeled appropriate? Let me know what you think in the comments. Share this video if you believe constitutional rights should never be optional. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss moments like this when truth is exposed, power is challenged, and the people holding office are forced to answer.